This playlist collects and organizes the segments of the background lecture that discusses information basically from the last 50 years or so of U.S. history that provides us with some context in real concrete events from history to ground the more abstract theoretical discussions that we find in Dershowitz and Scary. So in this lecture, I'm going to talk in a sort of general and relatively superficial way about the last 50 years in the United States history. And I'm going to focus in more detail, though again, not doing anything like adequate justice to the events, on a period starting approximately in 2003 and ending in approximately 2010. And in focusing on this particular period of time, I'm going to provide a brief chronology, a brief account of the historical development of the events during this period. Events in which officials at the highest level of government, through executive orders, through opinions written by the Attorney General of the United States, through memos and orders by the Secretary of Defense, crafted, implemented, and attempted to provide a legal justification for what under the Geneva Convention and the International Convention on Human Rights constitutes torture. And to be clear about the nature of the acts that were sanctioned and carried out under the direct orders of the United States government by the agents of our government, we're going to outline and discuss a number of the acts that were committed during this period. Now, this discussion isn't going to be pleasant or fun. It's not intended to run down the United States or to make the United States seem any different or morally inferior to any other country. But it will provide us with a concrete historical basis for thinking about the abstract theoretical arguments that are forwarded in Dershowitz and Scary. In presenting this material, I'm going to do a lot of direct quotation from a number of different reporters from this period of time. And I'll try and look at reporters from international news sources and reporters from domestic news sources. In fact, at one point, I even quote somebody writing for the LA Weekly. And I do this to emphasize that the facts that are reported about this period are really beyond dispute. One's interpretation of the significance of these facts may differ, but the facts themselves are well reported and well known. So I'm going to start by quoting a reporter, Naomi Klein, from an article that she wrote in 2005 for the British magazine The Guardian. And this was part of international and national attempts to come to grips with reporting that revealed the nature of the interrogation techniques that were being used, particularly in one prison by the name of Abu Ghraib, and to place them in the historical context of U.S. behavior in the last 50 years, 60 years. And so Klein writes, writing in Newsweek on the need to ban torture, Senator John McCain says that when he was a prisoner of war in Hanoi, he held fast to the knowledge, and here she starts to quote from his article directly, that we were different from our enemies, that we, if the roles were reversed, would not disgrace ourselves by committing or approving such mistreatment of them. And at this point, Klein stops quoting McCain, and she comments on her understanding and interpretation of McCain's statement. It's a stunning historical distortion, she tells us. By the time McCain was taken captive, the CIA had launched the Phoenix program, and as McCoy, who's written on this topic, writes, and she quotes here from McCoy, its agents were operating 40 interrogation centers in South Vietnam that killed more than 20,000 subjects and tortured thousands more. Now, we may not agree with Klein's interpretive or editorial slant on the facts that she reports, but the facts that she reports are facts. They're real events that really happened in U.S. history. The United States, during the Vietnam War, created a program called the Phoenix Program, in which they trained, equipped, and supervised agents of the South Vietnamese government who went out and captured, interrogated what we recognize by the Geneva Convention and the International Convention on Human Rights and past judgments during World War II, for example, this torture of these people that resulted in 20,000 of them actually dying and many thousands more being tortured but not dying. Now, we may not like what Klein has to say. We may feel that she's treating the United States unfairly. And there's something to that. There's nothing unique in the behavior of the United States with regard to these kinds of interrogation techniques. In fact, during the 20th century, the British regularly captured and tortured Irish Republican Army suspects. And so we may disagree with the editorial stance that Klein takes towards the United States, although I don't happen to. But it isn't correct to suppose that the facts she reports are inaccurate. The United States really did do these things. The United States isn't alone in having done things like this, but it definitely did do these things. And in fact, when we look back at United States history, we discover that the U.S. has created and published 3 torture manuals. One in 1963 as part of the Phoenix program. One that was reported around 1996 as being used from 1982 to 1991, at least, in the School of the Americas, to train foreign military officials, spies, and political operatives from Latin America to torture, to blackmail, to extort, and to kill. And finally, the last one, which was the rewritten sections on interrogation in the Army Field Manual, as it appeared in 2004. And in fact, Dana Priest writes in the Washington Post in 1996 that U.S. Army intelligence manuals used to train Latin American military officers at the Army School of the Americas from 1982 to 1991 advocated executions, torture, blackmail, and other forms of coercion against insurgents. And Priest gets this information because the Pentagon released documents that detailed this behavior, these facts, as a result of the Washington Post's request under the Freedom of Information Act.